Hello, Davida.
Hi, Rabbi Mendy. Did I come on too early?
No, just on time.
Oh, okay.
Just on time.
Baruch Hashem, I made it.
There you go. Just finishing up some last minute things here. Almost ready to roll.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, Richard.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Baruch Hashem. Everything's good. Spoke to your parents yesterday?
Yes, I spoke to them. Thank you very much.
For sure. For sure. All righty. Just going to pull up. We'll do is today. We'll say some Tehillim together for the situation in the Holy Land. And then we'll jump into our Chumash. Okay. There we go. Hello, Vilma. Welcome back.
Good morning, Rabbi Mendy.
Good morning. That's right. It is morning. It is still morning. The sun is still on the rise. All righty. So let's begin today. Oops. I think I let everybody in. Yes. All right. Oh, there you go. Okay. Hello, Reggie. And Shaul. Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. There we go. We're keeping to the good morning. No matter, we established yesterday halachically it's permitted, so we won't get in trouble. All right.
You have the sweetest smile. You make the morning good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All righty. I guess it's the coffee. I'll have to send out the recipe for the coffee. Reggie, you're into coffee too? You got Ohio has good
By the
coffee?
gallon.
Do you grind your own beans? Do you grow your own beans in Columbus, in Ohio?
No, I don't go that far.
Oh, okay.
Just brew it up and drink it by the gallon.
There you go. There you go. That's where you get your laugh from. There you go. Fantastic. All right. Hello, Leva. Leva's with us. And we're ready to roll. So what I want to do is, and Shoal's drinking coffee. All the time.
Water.
Oh, see, that's why it took you so long. It took you so long to come along to the morning side.
No, if it was coffee, it would have been my 7th cup already.
7th.
Yeah. Reggie, are we on the same wavelength?
Uh-oh.
Reggie, we on the same wavelength?
Absolutely.
Okay.
7th cup. That's like in France. I was in France. So I went into a restaurant and I asked them for a shot of coffee and they gave me a cup about this big.
Oh my God.
For that, you get 7 cups.
No. Well, my first cup was at 5.
Experience in Paris with cups this big.
Yeah. My first cup was at 5:30.
Sorry?
The Cafe Elite, that Turkish coffee where it's just you just mix it in. It's jet fuel. I can't drink too much of that. Oh.
Okay. So that's what it was. You're saying they were.
They were trying to make you time travel again.
No wonder. Right after that, I ordered like a whole breakfast, lunch, dinner. They got me. I knew it was a setup. It was a whole setup. Now I know. Reggie, where were you? Okay. All right.
Sorry.
What we'll do is today, it is Rosh Chodesh. It's a special day, Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and but we want to celebrate the day. We also want to keep in mind in our prayers and in our learning, our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land and around the world. It's a situation which definitely calls for an extra push in our prayers, in our learning, in our mitzvahs, and never to underestimate the power of what we can do with what we think of as small little actions. But that's only in our small minds, the limited effect that we can see or not see at all. But we have tremendous power. Hello, Rav Herschel. Good to see you.
Good to be
Happy
seen.
Rosh Chodesh. You got a haircut. Fantastic. Very nice. Very nice. All right. I gotta get there too. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with some tzedakah. I'm gonna put a coin here. I know I come prepared because I set up the class. So it's like Shlomo Kalbach said, he never showed up late to a concert because when he shows up, that's when it starts. So Reggie came prepared too. Look at that. All righty. Reggie, you knew it was coming. So I encourage everyone to increase in their tzedakah. Besides for the fact that it's Rosh Chodesh, and every Rosh Chodesh, it's a good time to increase in tzedakah. But as well, tzedakah is definitely, yes, there you go. Rav Herschel also. Fantastic. Never too far out of reach. That's the way to go. By the way, for those that live in Montreal or anywhere else, I have these little pushkas. You can buy them in a Judaica store. I don't know about it, but there's little tiny pushkas, little cute ones, and that way you can keep it in your pocket. No, but you can always have it you should have a pushka. That's the tzedakah box, the charity box. You can have it in your car. You should have one in your car, and in your office, in your purse, whatever it is. Charity box to always give tzedakah is a good thing to have. So if you don't want to carry around a big thing like this, carry around a little thing like this, or a little Ziploc bag can also work, as long as you remember what the point of it is. So there, Rich has got his tzedakah box too. Look at that, fantastic. So everyone should be giving a coin or more to tzedakah. If it's not right now because you're stuck to the screen, it's a good thing to be stuck to right now. So do it later, but keep it in mind. And increase in let's all increase in tzedakah to for our brothers and sisters in Israel. I actually one of the things I try to distribute is talked about in the past. I'm just gonna put everyone on mute. Is oops, nope, wrong buttons over here. All right, let's try that one more time. Here we go. One of the things I try to do is get rolls of coins from the bank and like $2 worth of nickels and have it all at all times in my house. I have a charity box in my kitchen with a little bowl, and I empty out those coins, and that way we always have, for myself, for my kids, for my wife, we always have what to give, and I try to give that out to other people as well. So I'm actually in honor of today's class. I thank you so much for giving me the courage to remind me to give me the push rather to do it, because I need to refill. So I'm taking that commitment from our class today, and I hope everyone can join me. I'm going to go to the bank today. No more pushing it off, because I've been pushing it off way too long, and just a small trip to the bank. So, well, banks are never small trips. All right. So that's what I want to do today in honor of our brothers and sisters in Israel. So besides that, let's say a chapter of Tehillim, and then we'll jump into today's Chumash and talk about my favorite subject, the Levis, because I'm a Levi. So that's what today's Chumash is all about, and we'll take a little look into that. So I'm going to share with you chapter 20 of Psalms. It's a good thing to say at all times, especially in times of distress. It's, as we see in the first or the second verse, rather, number 2, may the Almighty answer you on a day of distress. So it's definitely a chapter which is related to distress, and a good thing to say. In fact, there's some deeper mysticism behind the second verse, which basically encourages us to think of those who are in distress when we say the second verse, and it has a special effect and a power. to relieve them of that distress. So if we think of our specific people, we have a list of names, or just in general, the Jewish people in Israel, or whoever else we would like to pray for, have them specifically in mind during the second verse 2. But I'll say it in Hebrew. You can follow with me or say it along in English, and then we'll jump into today's Chumash. Lam natseach mizmor liDavid ya'ancha Adonai b'yoim tzara yisagevcha shem Elihei Yaakov yishlach ezrecha mikodesh umitzion yisadeka yizkar kol min chaysecha va'ilascha yadash nesela yitan lecha chilvavecha v'chol atzascha yemale niranina b'shuasecha Oveshem Eloheinu Nidgal Yemale Adonai Kol Mishalisecha Ata Yadaiti Ki Yeshia Adonai Mishichai Yanehu Mishmei Kache Begvurais Yesha Yeminai Eila Vorechev Ve'ela Vasusim Va'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir Hema Kar'u V'Nafalu Va'anachnu Kamnu V'Anis Eidad Adonai Yeshia HaMelech Yanenu V'Yem Kar'enu. It's a good reminder. Number 8, that these trust in chariots and these in horses, but we mention the name of Hashem. So we come with a higher power. And that's very important to remember at all times, especially in times like these. So let's move right into today's Chumash. So we did charity, tzedakah, we did prayer, we did tehillim, and now we're going to do Torah. And those are the 3 pillars on which the world stands. And the world can definitely use some strengthening of the pillars. So here we go. Verse number 1. So what we're going to do today is something that we've done in the past, many pasts ago, and that is kind of go through the verses verse by verse. It's a shorter section today for the 4th reading of the parsha of Parshas Bamidbar, being that it is Wednesday, and we'll stick more to the text, and then I want to share with you some more fun facts on the stuff we'll learn today and a little deeper. So let's start with verse 1. Ve'ela toldes Adonu Moshe. These are the children, the offsprings of Aaron and Moshe. B'yom diber Hashem es Moshe b'Har Sinai, on the day that the Almighty is speaking to Moshe on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. What we're going to do is basically talk about the Levis. So right now the figureheads or the fatherheads of the Levis, the tribe of Levi, as we started off discussing yesterday, is Moshe and Aaron. Because as we will see that the tribe of Levi, or Levites in English, but I'm going to call them Levi, so that's what I mean, the Levites, they are going to break up into what we know as the Kohens, the Kohanim, the priests in English. So the Kohens are kind of a subgroup off of the larger group of Levi. So Moshe and Aaron being 2 brothers, and usually brothers are of the same tribe, right? Tribes go by families. You know the story of the guy that comes to the rabbi and he says, "Rabbi, I really want to be a Kohen." So the rabbi says, "I'm so sorry, sir, but it's not in my powers to make you a Kohen. You're either born a Kohen or not, Kohen or not." So the man says, "Come on, Rabbi, I know you rabbis, you know how to do these things. How much money? How much money?" So he says, "I'm telling you, it's not a matter of money. I cannot, it's beyond me. It's not something I can do." He says, "Okay, $1 million for the synagogue." The rabbi says, I wish. He says, 2 million, 3 million. Rabbi says, I can't. Nothing I say is going to help you. You can't be a Kohen. But now tell me, why would you give so much money to be a Kohen? What's in this for you? So he says, well, I'll tell you, my dad was a Kohen. My grandfather was a Kohen. I also want to be a Kohen. So that's the story. But the story goes, but of course that shows us that, that the truth that the Kohen, the Levi, the tribe goes by our fathers. It's the patriarch line, the paternal line. Now, if that's the case, Moshe and Aaron, who are discussed here, are both brothers from the same father, and therefore that's really where the breakaway happens. Whereas you would think that they both belong to the same tribe, we find out that Aaron starts by the word of God a new tribe, kind of a sub-tribe within the Levi tribe. Although tribe is the wrong word, but I hope, we get the point. Okay. So Rashi points out something which we've touched on in the past. kind of a mystery, and that is that although we say something which kind of gets us excited, oh, the children of Aaron and Moses, Aaron, I know about Moshe's children. Where did we talk about Moshe's children? And in fact, we're not going to discuss Moshe's children at all. But Rashi points out that when we talk about Moshe's children, we talk about who he taught, his disciples, his students, because students, says the Talmud, and here it's quoted by Rashi, whoever teaches the son of his friend Torah, it's as if he has given birth to him. So that's another way of acquiring children, is by teaching them Torah. So that's the idea. So not to skip over Moshe's children, Moshe did have, as we know, 2 sons that are recorded in the Torah, and we learned that they didn't follow in Moshe's footsteps. And not much more that we know about them, other than the fact that we find later on a mention that we talked about in the past of one of the children, but not much about their lives. So these are the names of the children of Aaron, says verse 2. Nadav, the eldest, the first one is Nadav. So we have 4 sons in total. Verse 3, and these are the children of Aaron who became the anointed priests. They became the Kohanim. They were installed to serve. Okay, so that's basically the beginning of the Cohen family. Quite literally, like the Cohens, like most Cohens are Cohens. Most Levis are Levis. There's some other interesting, I'll just put out there 2 other interesting last names, which actually are hints to the tribe. Okay, so Katz is a famous last name, Katz, right? Like cats and dogs. So Katz is actually in Hebrew an acronym. It's 2 letters in Hebrew, and they are Kaf and final Tzaddik. Kaf and Tzaddik are the 2 first letters of 2 words which are Kohen Tzedek, the righteous Kohen. So usually a Katz, someone that has last name Katz, will usually be a Kohen. One other last name that gives a hint to, modern day last name that gives a hint to the tribe is Siegel. Siegel, like we have a president here in the Zichron Kedoshim, Norton Siegel, Nachum Siegel. So Siegel is also usually, as he is a Levi. Okay, why? Because Siegel or Segal, more like with the biblical or Israeli pronunciation is Segal, is actually also an acronym. And the acronym of Segal in Hebrew, you spell that with 3 letters: Samach, Gimel, and Lamed. Segal, and those 3 letters are an acronym for these words. You ready? Sgan la Kohanim, which means the deputy to the Kohen, or which is basically the Levi. The Levi was there to serve the Kohen. As we mentioned before, they were protecting the temple, they were helping out the Kohens, so they were kind of second class in that sense. Okay, so just an interesting fun fact. All right, verse 4. Vayamas Nadav Avio lefnei Hashem. We learned the story where Nadav and Avio, they die. Be'akrivam eshzara lefnei Hashem. As they were bringing a foreign fire, a fire which was a sacrifice, or the incense, not at the right time, before Hashem, b'midbar Sinai, uvanim lai hayu lahem. So that all happened around Mount Sinai, because it happened in the tabernacle, which was first put up, and that's when this happened, by the foot of Mount Sinai. That's when they die, and they had no sons. So who is going to be the ones that actually serve in the tabernacle for all the coming years in the desert were Aaron and his 2 sons. They worked together, Elazar and Isamar. In fact, Elazar and Isamar, as the 2 sons of Aaron, also take on other roles, as we will find out at the end of the parsha. They also take on roles of being the heads or the leaders of different Levi families, as we touched on yesterday. And we'll see that more later. So not only are they the Kohanim serving in the tabernacle, they are also kind of in charge of some Levi families. As we mentioned yesterday, there was 3 main Levi families. verse 5. So here we get into the situation. So we kind of got through the Kohanim. The Kohanim got enough attention already, so we kind of had to run through them just to get to the Levies. But the Kohanim, we kind of really, we talked a lot about them in the previous Parshas and in Vayikra, with all the sacrifices that they officiate, and we talked about their clothing in Shemais, with all the clothing that they have. So the Kohanim got enough attention. Let's move along to the Levies, finally, for once and for all. So here it goes. Vayidabed Adonai el Moshe Lemer, Hashem, the Almighty speaks to Moshe, saying, and verse 6, Hakri Vismati Levi, bring close the tribe of Levi. Stand them before Aaron and let them serve him. So we find the Levies being, as I said, the deputy Cohen, if that's the word for deputy, but the idea of being the servant to the Cohen. I'm just going to ask for 22 seconds, and then I will try to give you the world, whatever the world I can give you. Okay, I am back. All right. See, that's what happens when I missed the Shema this morning. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Let's move along. Vishersu Oisai. Says Rashi, what exactly was the service that the Levies served the Kohanim? So, number one is they as it's spelled out in the next verse already, the idea of guarding the temple or guarding the tabernacle, primarily not allowing any aliens to come forward. No, not aliens. Anyone that's not a Cohen, any non-Cohen was not allowed to enter into certain parts of the temple or tabernacle. And it was a very big deal. In fact, the Israelites kind of complained about it, eventually. And we'll touch on that in the way when it happens in the later parsha. But there needed to be safeguards. There needed to be boundaries. There needed to be humans that were there, and their job was to police the holiness of the tabernacle and not allow people to come in when they were not allowed to or where they're not allowed to. So that was given to the Levies. That's the service being referred to here, at least in the first sense. That's described in verse 7. So they are. It says they're keeping the charge and the charge of the entire community before the tent of meeting to perform the service of the Mishkan. Basically, they are ensuring that the Kohen could do their job in the temple undisturbed, and ensuring that the Jewish people don't come close. The rest of the Jewish people, the Israelites, don't come close unless they are, with in the proper time, in the proper place. That's pretty much the sheirut, the service that the Levies have at this point. Verse 8, V'shamru es kol klei oyel moed ves mishmeres b'nei Yisrael lavedas avedas hamishkan. And they also guarding the vessels of the tabernacle. And here Rashi is jumping on these words as quoting that in the quoting the words of the verse, the charge of the children of Israel. And here is a crucial point to understand the Levi's position, because in truth, everyone has the job to guard the tabernacle. Everyone has the job to take part in the continuous upkeep of the tabernacle, not just in donations, but in its day-to-day running. The problem is that we're busy, so the Levies come on as their shluchim. They come on as their emissaries, as to substitute for their job. But that doesn't take away, from the fact that it's everyone's responsibility. And it's just that for certain things, you can't be there guarding the tabernacle all day. You gotta, so that there's certain people which are hired on your behalf. But it's not that it becomes their problem and not my problem. It's our problem. It's our thing, and you're doing it on my behalf. So I always see it as something which I am a crucial part of, just technically, physically, I can't be there, so you're being there on my behalf. It's a very different kind of attitude to the Mishkan or to Judaism in general. We think of rabbis, or we think of, they say the story of the pig with the chicken, the rooster, chicken, the hen, the pig and the hen, I think it was. I can't remember now. When I was looking at them, the pig was very visible. I couldn't tell if it was a chicken or a hen or a rooster walking next to the pig. All right. Anyways, I didn't take a picture, but the idea is they were walking down the street, and the pig nudges the hen nudges, gives a nudge, gives a little elbow to the pig walking next to him, and says, "Hey, look at that restaurant. They're serving bacon and eggs. That's us. So the chicken's all proud about it." So the pig turns to the chicken and says, "Hey, take it easy, kid. Take it easy, kid. For you, it's just a donation. For me, it's my whole life." Powerful words from the pig, right? So the idea is that the question we have to ask ourselves in our attitude to Judaism, are we just giving donations? Like the hen, gives a chicken and can walk off, gives an egg rather, or are we like, so here we're elevating the pig, taking a lesson from the pig, and is it our entire lives, not just a donation, and donation not just in money but in time, but that's not what it's about. So even though there are people which have the ability or kind of are there full time, let's say, doing Jewish things full time, perhaps on others' behalf, but it never takes away from the responsibility from just everybody, from the regular Jew as well. So it's a good thing to take away from this Rashi. But here we do end off saying that because the Levis have this, are working on behalf of the rest of the Jewish people, they get paid for it, and their pay is what's called the tithing, the meiser, and that's something that we've discussed previously. We'll discuss more later, but it's seen pretty much as a payment that the Jewish people are paying their agents in the temple. Okay, verse 9. V'nasata es alavim la'anin u'levanav nesunim heim aloi me'ez b'nei Yisrael. So besides for guarding and being the agents of the Jewish people, primarily the Levites are there to help along and be of assistance to the Kohanim. Es arin es banav tifkait v'shamru es kuhunasam b'hazar hakariv yumas. We have again the appointing of Aaron and his sons. Make sure that they are safeguarding their position to the point, as we'll see, the Levites cannot, even a Levi who's getting very close to the Kohen, cannot actually do the service that is meant only for the Kohen. And anybody that does try to swap their role is going to lead to a death consequence. And Rashi points out the specific things which only the Kohen can do. The Almighty speaks to Moshe, Rashi, so the verse is, the Almighty is saying, I'm taking the Levites as substitutes for the firstborn. And they're going to be for me. They'll be my tribe. As we pointed out earlier in the parsha, they are called the Goya and Shalmelech, the King's Legion. Rashi points out that the Almighty is almost like giving a reason, pretty much is giving a reason as to why the Levites are his. And we'll see what that means in a moment, more practically. But what the Almighty is saying about the Levites is because at first it was the firstborns that were supposed to do it, but because they were involved in the sin of the golden calf, so they were disqualified, and it was the Levites who had nothing to do with the golden calf that they now take the place of the firstborns, and they become my special legion, which again, Levites include Kohanim, which will basically be the ones to serve in the temple, in the tabernacle. Rashi points, so the verse continues. Well, if the Levites are substituting for the firstborns, well, why were the firstborns chosen in the first place? Or why was it originally supposed to be the firstborns? So verse 13 says, well, the firstborns I dealt with in Egypt, and in Egypt, all those firstborns were struck, meaning the Egyptian firstborns. And at that time, when the Egyptian firstborns were struck, I sanctified for myself, I took for myself, I kind of separated for myself the firstborn Jewish people. Both did it, but it's a 14-volume book. So this is from the book which talks about all the agricultural mitzvahs, and one of them is Shemitah. We touched about that. We touched on that last week, and quite fascinating how Shemitah is coming up this next year. And many of you may have seen the story that came out yesterday, where a farmer in the land of Israel, a missile, I saw the picture, maybe you saw the picture too, a missile landed, or a rocket landed in a greenhouse, and it didn't, there was no damage. There was absolutely no, I mean, the rocket, I don't know how these things work exactly, but the rocket kind of landed whole without actually doing what rockets do. And you could see the greenhouse alive and well. And the way the story goes, and I can't verify for it, but it was just the way I saw it, is that the farmer had committed to keeping the laws of Shemitah next year, the sabbatical year. And he saw that as a direct consequence, a blessing, as the Almighty says in last week's parsha that we learned, the Almighty said, I will command my blessing upon your fields. So quite an extraordinary thing to actually see from yesterday. And we hope to see many more miracles like that. Shevet Levi, here, Maimonides says like this. Although the tribe of Levi does not have an ancestral portion within the land of Israel, the Jewish people were commanded to give them cities to dwell in and additional residential property. The cities include the 6 cities of refuge and 42 additional cities. When cities of refuge will be added in the era of Mashiach, all will be given to the Levites. Okay, so first of all, what this kind of opens up to us is that the tribe of Levi had no portion in the land, and that's because they were busy with the temple. Now, to have land would mean that they had to they would have to work the land, and they had no time for that. They were supposed to be centered around the temple and teachers of the people, so they didn't have land to work. So they didn't have a specific portion. So they were kind of spread around, as we see in these 48 cities, cities of refuge, plus 42 additional ones. And when Mashiach comes, they're going to have the other 3 cities, which I think you learned about on Friday with Rabbi Fine. The Torah does actually go through, and we'll see this in a later parsha, it's later on in the book of Numbers, how exactly the city of the Levi should look. So it's kind of interesting that we take very good care of our Levis, being that they are not working the land. So it was up to the community as a whole to set up the city for them. There had to be very specific parameters and what exactly could be done with those parameters to the Levi cities. So I just wanted to point this out so you can see how we take care of them. Now that I have none of their land can be used for burial spots. It has to be out of their lands. Quite very specific commands, and we'll see it more in the parshas as we get to there. What I wanted to show you is more towards the end. Yeah. Okay, so here's an interesting idea. I'm just going to point out over here because this might answer some questions that I've received in the past. But in paragraph 11, the Rambam says, it appears to me that the above applies only with regard to the land for which a covenant was established with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Their descendants inherited it, and it was divided among them. If, however, other lands will be conquered by a king of Israel, the priests and the Levites have the same rights as the entire Jewish people. This is one of the ways how we answer how the Levites will have a portion in the world in the land of Israel when Mashiach comes. There's definitely a lot of talk about the fact that Levites will have a portion just like everybody else, not just the 42 or 48 cities rather that we talked about in the beginning. And that's because they can have a part of the land that's additional to the what's called the original land, which was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's 3 additional countries which have not yet been given to us. So that's probably part of the land that the Levites will get. And there's quite a lot of talk about that every tribe will have an exact equal part in the world to come. And I want to pull that up for you. Actually, let's pull it up right now, but we haven't gotten to the point yet. But here you actually see from Ezekiel in chapter 48, verse 31, that you see how he's discussing in his prophecies about the giving out of the land in the world to come in Mashiach era, and he does mention. Oh, just lost that. But why can't I scroll down? Okay, let's do this. Here we go. Verse 31, the gates of the city. He's actually talking about the city of Jerusalem. But there's 3 gates on the north, named for the tribes of Israel: the Reuven gate, the Judah gate, and the Levi gate. So here he's more talking about how it's the city of Jerusalem, as this whole chapter is interpreted by the Abarbanel, one of the prime commentators on the Tanakh, in the talking of Mashiach era, is that every tribe will have their own portion. And yet, when it comes to Jerusalem, Jerusalem will be a city that's undivided at all, different than in the biblical times when it was divided between Judah and Benjamin. But in the times of Mashiach, Jerusalem will be equal footing for everybody, and everyone's going to have a gate. Every tribe, including the tribe of Levi, will have a gate into Jerusalem. Quite fascinating. And so here, there's a piece of Talmud I wanted to show you from Bava Basra. And here it reads as follows. Unlike the division in this world in the time of Joshua, which is when the land was first divided amongst the Jewish people, will be the division of the portions in the world to come in the Messianic era. So it's not going to be the same way. What's the difference? In this world, meaning in the first time that it happened with Joshua, when the land was originally given out to all the tribes and the tribes took their portions, if a person had a field of grain, he does not have a field for an orchard. If he has a field for an orchard, he does not have a field for grain. This is so because each climate and variety of soil is suitable for a different type of produce. Basically, when the land was apportioned with Joshua, the land worked in a certain way by nature. And if you got in the northern part of Israel, then you had better climate and better soil for certain fields. If you had in the south of Israel, you had the ability to plant other things. But in the world to come, in the Mashiach era, you do not have any person who does not have a portion in the land of Israel. Everyone's going to have in the mountains and in the lowland and in the valley. And he quotes, and the Talmud quotes from this verse, which is to say that everyone's portion will be the same, and the Holy One, blessed be He, will distribute it to them personally, as it is stated. And these are their portions, says Hashem. This is the conclusion of the Brisa. So that's just an interesting intro into the fact that we will all be having an equal portion in the world in Mashiach era in the land of Israel, which and having all the good stuff, the mountains, the lowlands, whatever it is, will all be part of our portions. How that's going to work out geographically, I don't know, but we'll find out. Okay, so that's just about Levi having a portion as well. Yes, Vilma, go ahead.
You mentioned 12 gates per tribe. I read that there's a 13th gate, and that is for anyone of the Jewish tribe to enter.
Yes, very good point. There's 13 gates, which I discussed, 12 taken by the tribes. The 13th is for those that, either for converts or for those that don't know which tribe they belong to. So there's always a gate in. Yes, very good point.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I just saw it in the chat. That was a question for Linda.
Right. Well, okay, I'm not looking at the chat yet, but I will later. Okay, I hope that touched on that. Yeah, definitely that has to do with the siddur, that we pray, the different nuschais, the different prayer books. There's lots to talk about that. I want to point out, though, this last paragraph here. The last 2 paragraphs here. This is really the crux. Is that the word? The crux. Here it is. Why did the Levites not receive a portion in the inheritance of Eretz Israel and the spoils of war like their brethren? So again, we're talking about when it was first apportioned to the people, because they were set aside to serve God and minister unto Him and to instruct people at large in His just paths and righteous judgments. As it says in Deuteronomy, They will teach your judgments to Jacob and your Torah to Israel. Therefore, they were set apart from the ways of the world. They do not wage war like the remainder of the Jewish people, nor do they receive an inheritance, nor do they acquire for themselves through their physical power. Instead, they are God's legion. As stated, God has blessed his legion and he provides for them. As stated, I am your portion and your inheritance. And here is the big one. Not only the tribe of Levi, but any one of the inhabitants of the world. Call each for each. It's quite a big. So this can imply anybody, not just the Jewish people, whose spirit generously motivates him, and he understands with his wisdom to set himself aside and stand before the Almighty to serve him and minister to him and to know the Almighty, proceeding justly as the Almighty made him, removing from his neck the yoke of the many reckonings which people seek. He or she is sanctified as Holy of Holies. The Almighty will be his portion and heritage forever, and will provide what is sufficient for him in this world, like he provides for the priests and the Levites. And thus David declared in Psalms, the Almighty is the lot of my portion. You are my cup. You support my lot. And that is, blessed be the merciful one who provides assistance. It's a fitting end, although that's the end of each. This is the ending of a section in the of the Rambam. So that's the line that he ends off with each section. But the idea is this kind of mirrors one of the Mishnahs in Pirkei Avos, in the Ethics of the Fathers, which is really that one who takes off the yoke of the world, meaning it kind of does what he's got to do, but not completely head first, allows for the yoke of heaven to be placed upon him, and the Almighty responds in kind. So that is that for today. So it's so we can all be part of this legion. It's not exclusive. Definitely now. So just to touch on what Vilma brought up, and I see here in the chat now, will there be 13 gates? Yeah. So I see that this, okay, so that is definitely a truth about the 13 gates that is actually discussed in that chapter of Ezekiel, because he talks about these gates going into Jerusalem. Although there it only discusses 12 gates. So it's an interesting idea, but not much to do with the 13 gates. The 12 gates around Jerusalem have to do with the fact that when you count the tribes, you'll always get to 12. So when I don't want to bring in too many things, but basically there's 12 gates. That's more of a practical thing into Jerusalem. The 13 gates is more of a, to the best of my understanding, more of a spiritual thing. It has to do with the fact that ultimately, when you count the tribes in a broader way, there are 13 to count. We'll leave it at that for now. And basically, that 13th is there for the converts and for those that don't know which tribe they're from, which is most people today, have the way through that gate, and how that relates to the way we pray is actually the fact that the Arizal, the great Kabbalist, composed a prayer book for the 13th gate. So for all those, meaning the idea of having a variety of prayer books goes back to the idea of each tribe having their own way of connecting to God, like we discussed yesterday. That difference is very healthy. But for those that don't know which one they belong to, there's that all-encompassing gate, and that's the Siddur of the Arizal, which we happen to daven from here at Chabad. So you can get that one there. All right.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
So I bought the Siddur Tehillat Hashem, and I think that's the Kabbalah one. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes, very much so. Because if you see on the Tehillat Hashem, you see under that it says based off the Arizal. Should say
No, it's completely white. So I don't know where it says it's based on the Arizal, but I've been reading it, and it does say like Rabbi Shneur Zalman, blah, 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 first published his Siddur, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I didn't see where it said the Arizal. But it does state that it has a connection with Chabad Lubavitch.
Yeah. That's the one. You got it.
Thank you.
Got it. For sure. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And we should only share in good news. And
Amen.
all the best. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi Mendy. Thank you.
For sure. For sure. All
Thank
the
you,
best.
Rabbi Mandy.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hello, everybody,
Hello.
and welcome. How's everybody doing?
Hello, Rabbi.
Reggie and Herschel, Leslie, Tim. Wow, Tim, look at your background. Looks like you're ready to teach. Diane, welcome, and
Hi.
Rita, Irma, Liba's here, Vilma, Richard, David, and Batya. Beautiful. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech shehakol na'eh b'dvarei. L'chaim, everybody, l'chaim. Oh,
L'chaim.
I see everybody's already with our l'chaim. Okay. We are going to learn some Pirkei Avos today. We're going to get it on screen right now. There we go. See, before you, we are holding by the 11th Mishnah. We're traveling. We are traveling forward. Not that fast, but, you know, the movement nonetheless. So, if you recall from the previous class, we spoke about Shmaya. Shmaya and Avtalion were the two heads of the Jewish people in their times. Their times means before the Common Era, at the end of the Chashmonaim period, and the beginning of the reign of Herod. So it's before the Common Era, decades before the Common Era began. Okay. They were, if you recall, we mentioned, they were both converts. They were both converts from the Assyrian king Sancherib. The Assyrian king Sancherib, many centuries earlier, was the one who came into Israel, and the 10 tribes of Israel somehow got lost. That was Sancherib. So that's where they descend. They are converts. They are, Shmaya is the Nasi, and Avtalion, who we're dealing with today. There's Shmaya and Avtalion. Avtalion, who we're dealing with today, he was the Av Beis Din, the head of the Jewish court. Now, why was he called Avtalion? So according to the Bartanura, he's called Avtalion because Av means father, Talion for the youth. One of his things that he was responsible for as the head of the Beis Din, head of the Jewish court, was taking care and concerned for the orphans. Back in the day, we're talking about over 2,000 years ago, of course, life expectancy was very short, and therefore, orphans was a very great reality of society back then. So one of the things that the Av Beis Din, the head of the Jewish court, would be responsible for, wasn't just scholarship and teachings, but was taking care and being entrusted of the orphans. So therefore the name Avtalion, I don't know if is that like the nickname, so to speak, because of one of the great things that he did, or that becomes what he's called. I'm not exactly certain. In any case, so again, for the context of the times, this is during the Second Holy Temple, probably about 100 years later, or maybe just under 100 years later, the Holy Temple was destroyed, the second one in the year 69 by the Romans. Now, at that time, even though, we had the Holy Temple, but we were under the rulership of the Roman Empire. They controlled. Herod was, king of Judea, who was a Roman, a Roman, a national who was responsible for taking care of Israel at the time. So there was a lot of corruption as a result, quite obviously, which means positions of the Jewish people were unfortunately, there for sale. One of them being the high priest. The high priest, who does many of the services and, so to speak, up for sale in a sense. And happened Yom Kippur, on one Yom Kippur, I think we described, where do we have a class about this? Oh my gosh, what did we have a class about Yom Kippur? And we spoke about the high priest. It was from the Torah portion that we had. Yeah, in Parsha, just a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about it because Parshas Achrei Ma'is speaks about the high priest and the offerings and so on. So one of the things we spoke about is when the high priest comes out of the Holy of Holies and the light of God that's shining upon the individual. That's of course when the high priest was a holy person. But being that this was often bought, so what would happen is that didn't happen, and people knew, people weren't stupid. They know when it's a bought position and it's not a holy, righteous person who is fulfilling the mandate and the duties. And then after Yom Kippur, there was this, used to be, if you recall from the prayers on Yom Kippur, if you recall about the prayers on Yom Kippur, we spoke about the idea of the after Yom Kippur, the high priest would not necessarily get home until well after midnight. Yom Kippur usually would end like 7 o'clock. Wouldn't get home till after midnight. Why? Because the crowds of people who wanted to see the high priest, to see the great, glory, and it's like a chassid wants to see his Rebbe, right? We want to see the Rebbe, and he would greet everybody. It's after Yom Kippur, where brought atonement for the Jewish people. We're all now a clean slate to start our year in a relationship with God, and it's renewed. So it was remarkable. So what happened one year when Shemaiah and Avtalia, they're walking to go home, everybody started to follow them and not the high priest, because this high priest was a bought one, wasn't a holy person, wasn't a righteous individual. And the people know that. So they start following Shemaiah and Avtalia. The high priest is very upset. So the high priest says to them, "May the descendants of the nations come in peace." That was a snide remark. How come? Because alluding to the fact that they are converts and they're coming from the nations of the world. Oh, may you come in peace. Like, who do you think you are? You're a convert. And this is, remember that this high priest is only a high priest in name, but not in holiness, wasn't right? So they respond back and they say, may the descendants of the nations who practice the practice of Aaron come in peace. And may the descendants of Aaron who do not practice the practice of Aaron not come in peace. So they heard, they got it. That what? That you need to be a decent person. And they got the message across to anything urgent? I'm teaching. Text me. Okay, come on. Sorry. my wife, just to make sure it wasn't something urgent. So this is what they respond. Peace comes to people who come in peace. If you come in conflict to create conflict, then, you know, that's what you get, so to speak. L'chaim, l'chaim. So this is, you know, gives us a little historical, you know, picture of what's going on in the times. Even though it was the Holy Temple, and actually it's interesting. Tomorrow is Tanya. We're going to speak about the second Holy Temple. Today we spoke the first Holy Temple. Tomorrow will be about the second, and this is there in the times at the end of the, you know, in about the last 100 years of the Holy Temple, second Holy Temple. All right. So now that we got some background, let us see what he shares with us. And what does he share with us? Italian would say, scholars, chachamim, right? Hizaru b'divreichem. Be careful with your words. Why? Why do you have to be careful with your words? For you may be exiled to a place inhabited by evil elements. And who will start the words that to suit their negative purposes. The disciples who come after you will then drink of these evil waters and be destroyed. And what would be the end? That the name of heaven will be desecrated. We're going to learn this in a couple of different ways. Understand these teachings in a different manner. But the first point is, according to many of the commentators, it's saying chachamim, right? Scholars, right? In other words, those who are teaching to the masses. Be careful. Why? Because your words may be distorted. You have to be very careful how you explain something. They will distort it. Why will they distort it? Because they're looking for something to base their belief on. And therefore, what will happen? They will then teach it to others, and those disciples will drink of the evil waters, and they will be destroyed, both, as commentators say, spiritually and physically. Because when your spirit is destroyed, ultimately that's going to also affect you physically, that you will be physically destroyed. So this is the, now, it's not saying here to be silent, just have to be careful. In other words, we're talking about in the times, again, the office was bought off. It's also the time of the Sadducees and the Tzedukim and the Baisusim, the Sadducees and the Baisusim, as we spoke about earlier, and we'll dwell upon that in a bit more than that, more on that. But we need to be very careful. We've got to teach, but there's always people with an agenda that they're trying to take this and just to fit it into their preconceived notions or their belief system that is not part of Jewish belief system. So that's going to create an exile for the individual, which we'll get into that idea in a moment, a little more about that. The Abarbanel. Any questions on that? Any questions, any thoughts about that? So, it says Chachamim, sages, to be careful, right? So, if you recall in the Haggadah of Pesach, Chacham, Chacham, the wise son, what does he say, right? There's another way to read it. You punctuate it a little different. Chacham, wise. Who's wise? I mean, sorry, Mahu. Mahu means like, what is he? Like, what is a wise person? Another way to read it. Because you put a comma and then you put a comma. Oimer, what a person says. In other words, until you open up your mouth, as King Solomon said, we don't know if you're wise or not. Once you open up your mouth. So we know if you have wisdom or not. Now, the fact that you have wisdom, here is now we're being exhorted by the wisdom that we have to be careful that it is, in a sense, what this is saying is when you are answering something or responding or teaching, you're not teaching an idea, you're teaching a person. Make sure that this is in accordance to the person in a way that they won't that they won't make from it what shouldn't come out of it, distort it, right? That's a very important thing, to teach in such a way. That's not an easy thing, obviously. It's a very difficult thing, because not necessarily do you always know where a person's coming from and what, where they're taking this, the teachings and so on. But one needs to be cognizant of it, aware of it, and really try to teach the person, even when you're teaching it by the masses, right? You have to make sure that it will be taken by the individual in the way that it should be taken. And the truth is, on this level, to me, this is really speaking to like sages like Shammai and Naphtali, like Hillel, who is a student, as a matter of fact, of theirs. And by the way, Hillel is the next tomorrow's teachings, and Hillel, why he says what he says, one of the reasons is because of what he witnessed with the high priest, but we'll mention that tomorrow. In any case, such an individual, when they're speaking to the masses, they're really speaking to everybody as an individual. And that is the greatness of Jewish sages, holy people, that they have that capability. That's not the simple meaning what it means over here, but on a deeper level, that's what the exhortation can perhaps mean. The Abarbanel, who was a sage who lived in Spain, who led the Jews out of Spain in 1492 when the Jews were expelled by Ferdinand and Isabel. He was actually a member of the parliament in Spain. He was a great, not only a scholar, but a great statesman. But he was given the choice either to convert to Catholicism, or be burned at the stake, or go into exile and to leave Spain. So he was one of the leaders of the Jewish people. Of course, led them into exile, and as they left Spain in 1492, on by the way, you know what day it was? Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. So he says, and interesting, that this is specifically speaking about mystical teachings that you have to be careful, because mystical teachings are more abstract, more ethereal, and there you have to be specifically more careful because it could be distorted, right? In other words, a teaching of, the Shabbos law is such and such, you can, or what we're learning in the Talmud, the Shema, right? That the Shema should be said, until midnight, and you shouldn't, wait till after midnight to say the Shema, even though biblically you can do it until dawn. But the sages made a fence around the law, that all those things are less of a chance that people are going to make a mistake with and distort. Of course, you can distort anything, but less of a mistake. The Abarbanel says, not really what it's speaking about here is more the mystical teachings, that though in that area, we have to, Yizharu, be very careful. Okay. Welcome, Sarah Malka and Larry L'chaim. Thank you for joining. Is that clear? Excellent. Okay, so let's continue with the Mishnah over here. What does it say? That that Shem Shemayim Mischala, that the name of heaven will be desecrated. So let's go back for a moment. Oops. Let's go back for a moment. What does it mean that that heaven will be desecrated? So again, we had this concept already. Where was that? Antigona is Ish Sukkah in the third Mishnah. We're in the 11th one right now, but in the third Mishnah, remember, he had two students, Tzaddik and Baisus, who went off because of a statement that he made. What was his statement? That you should serve God not on the condition to get a reward, right? You shouldn't serve God on the condition to get a reward. And others do it for the sake of heaven, do it for the sake of doing it for the sake of God, right? That's what he taught. And what did they say? Is it possible that you can employ workers, give them a job to do, and not pay them at the end? I think, the reward for the work they did. Is it possible that God gave us this world and we're not going to get a payment for it? So they said, this Judaism stuff, that makes sense. And what happened? Of course, they distorted. They went and distorted teachings. How did they go? How did they do this? Well, they actually wanted to go away from Judaism entirely, from Torah and mitzvahs entirely, and abandon it completely. And they were starting a new Jewish group. I don't know if this is like Jewish atheists. They maybe they believed in God. I don't think that was the issue. But in observance, who needs all of this? And so initially they wanted to completely abandon and create a new group, a sect of followers that would abandon Judaism, but, be Jewish, because you can't abandon being Jewish. After all, you are Jewish, and they felt proud to be Jewish, for whatever reason. But no one would follow them because Jews don't want to abandon Judaism, at least back in the day, and, even today. So what did they say? They came up, okay, the written law is okay, but the oral tradition, no. That needs to be, discarded, because that's the rabbis, they made all their arguments, their rationale, and so on and so forth. That's what they did. And therefore, you have to take everything literally in the Torah, not like an eye for an eye, is to be taken literally. And since there's no oral tradition, actually to follow, so then you could understand it and express it or teach it any way you want. So with that background, you can understand now even more so how important it is to be able to teach in a way that it's not going to be distorted. This is what, the dealings in the day, what they had. Every generation has their challenges in the Jewish community and what they need to deal with. Today it's just apathy, You know what the difference between apathy and ignorance is? I don't know, and I don't care. So, that's what we have today, right? And Michael, welcome, and Katie, welcome, and Robert, welcome. That's the reality of today, right? But the reality back then is they had a following. The Sadducees had a following of Jews who just accepted the written word, not the oral Torah. And because of that, you could kind of interpret it any way you wanted to. And therefore, Judaism didn't mean too much because there was didn't have any hold on anything. Because for those, we're all familiar that what's written in the Torah is very open-ended. Even, putting on tefillin, they should be frontlets between, bind them on your arm and frontlets between your eyes. It could be anything, right? Do anything for that. Even Shabbos. The only thing about Shabbos that the Torah tells us openly and clearly is don't make a fire. Where's all the other things come from? So this is how they, their intent really was they didn't want Torah mitzvahs. So they realized that the people weren't going to buy that, but they would buy, okay, the written word. At least we have some semblance of tradition and values and, and Judaism. And, we'll make it up as we go, and we'll define it and as we choose to. So this is the background of, therefore, why to be so extra careful. Chachamim, be careful in how you are teaching, because there are those with that agenda who definitely want to derail the teachings. By the way, 1,000 years ago, there was another group called the Karaites, the Karaites, and that in Hebrew it's Kro'im, and it comes from the word Kro'ah, which means written. They also only believed in the written word and not in the oral tradition. Both the Sadducees and the Karaites are distinct now. I mean, you have people who personally believe in such a way, but there's definitely no such movement really today. So again, this is the background, and therefore what you're going to create is, because you have to understand, they mix together. They all mix together, and therefore when they were teaching to those who were true believers and to those who weren't. And why? How were they able to mix together? Because at the time, the Jewish people, even though we had the Holy Temple, we did not have control over our destiny. The Romans were in control of Israel at the time, and before that, it was the Greeks. Right? The story of Hanukkah with the Chashmonoim took place about 80 years before this story. 80, maybe 100 years, I don't know exactly. 80 to 100 years before the Aftalion, who we're speaking about right now, right? And they were battling against the Greeks at that time. But shortly thereafter, the Romans came, and we weren't in control. So because we weren't in control, those who wanted, to have subversive activity, either personally in order to gain certain powers, like being the high priest and buying the position because you had money, you had prestige, or other beliefs and so on. So you see how the whole, there's a lot of crookedness that was going on, and therefore how important was to be able to teach appropriately. And all at the same time, these sages and the students are all part of Jewish life, and it's all mixed together. It wasn't, people lived in different communities. Today you might have that more like in Israel, right? You have in Bnei Brak, and you have in Mea Sharim, and you have different places that people live amongst themselves. Back then, it really wasn't that way. It really wasn't that way. And therefore, when you taught, everybody had to be worried about. Is that clear? Any questions on this? So let's now look at this Mishnah in a different way, right? That's the basic simplistic, the basic idea over here, right? Giving all the historical background and understanding what was going on, and therefore the statement that is being made here. But the Medrash gives us another understanding of the Mishnah over here, right? So be careful with your words. Is anybody, because you may be exiled in a place inhabited by evil elements. for your words. Take out the brackets over here where it says it distort your words, because that's added. That's not part of the actual Mishnah, right? That's to give us the simple meaning, but that's not part of the Mishnah, right? And disciples are going to come after you, will drink of these evil waters. Whoa, evil waters. This is not about now, about distortion. It's another statement about you and your words. And it may be destroyed, and heaven will and heaven will be desecrated. Anybody have an idea what this might mean?
Rabbi, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
there's a historical context to this, because there were people that were persecuting the Jewish Kabbalists and the Jewish people in general, to where these were evil people trying to kill the Jewish people for their knowledge.
So
And yeah.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
So as I understand it, they were killed, but before they were killed, the knowledge was tortured and taken from them.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know how you take knowledge from somebody. Unless
Well, because the people that were killing these Jewish Kabbalists wanted to take their knowledge by force.
Okay. So I'm not exactly certain what where I mean, there were time periods, of course, what you're saying is true. And even if they were just the sages of Israel, absolutely. This was, one of the great challenges of the Jewish people in those days, and later on also, which we'll get more into that. Very true. But this teaching over here, it's speaking about sages. Be careful with your words. So the first explanation is be careful, because who is going to be the recipient of it, that they might want to distort it, right? And we gave the context for that, right? Now, there's another explanation over here based on the Midrash, that it's not speaking about someone else who's going to distort it, but you. It's about you, the sage, the person, the teacher. Careful with your words. What does that mean?
Can I just say something that comes to mind?
Go ahead, Katie.
There's a story, and I don't know which teacher it was, but he had like a dream that I think it was Satan that was holding a book. And then he asked him, what's that book? And the guy was just like, it's your teachings. So then he woke up and he was like, one of his students was compiling a book of his teachings, but it wasn't anything like what he was actually teaching.
Okay, but that fits in very good with what we just said, right? That you're going to have students who are taking from your words and distorting it, right? Whether willfully, which was the context, the historical context that we gave, right? Or just because you didn't explain it well enough, and therefore the person, came away. And that was the Abarbanel that we explained, that he said, especially when it comes to mystical teachings, that it's very easy for someone to have it distorted for them, because it's abstract and it's not so easy to get. So what you're saying is very true. I don't know about that story. I haven't heard that story, but thank you for sharing it. That how we have to be careful and how it may be distorted, again, either willfully or unintentionally, because just you didn't teach things an appropriate way, and then because of that, things can go off the path. But yes, but now I'm so let me explain. Careful with your words. What? Careful with your words, because you could talk the talk but not walk the walk. That's what the Mishnah is saying here. Careful with your words, that your words are not just your words, but you're walking the walk. Be careful with that, because it's easy to preach, right? Right now I'm talking to myself. Very easy to preach, to say these words, but you gotta live the words, right? That's why by Chassidim, they would always say, in the Farbringen, or whenever they were talking, I don't know, whenever, but at least this was their sentiments when they spoke, that they're really speaking to themselves. So I just want to thank you all for being here, that I could talk to myself. If you weren't here, first of all, and I was talking this way, you'd probably send me to the insane asylum. So, really, I'm talking to myself. And if you want to hear, good, whatever you take from it, wonderful. Hopefully not anything that should be a distortion. Not that you would do that willfully, but that I didn't explain it well, and therefore there could be a distortion of it, right? So again, the point being, be careful with your words, that it's not just words. You're not just preaching, but you're talking to yourself, and even better, you're walking the walk. This is what the Midrash comes and tells us, which is a powerful idea. And from it, look what happens. Look what the Mishnah is saying. I mean, this is very powerful statement, because the Mishnah is saying that if you're not, you're careful with your words, that your words should match your actions, right? Again, it's hinted over here. It's not openly saying it, because there's many different meanings to this. This is another angle of what it means to be careful with your words, right? Again, remember that the brackets over here are added to give the first explanation that we gave. The Medrash is saying you might be exiled to a place. In other words, what does it mean, exile? Because you don't really living it, or again, you're really talking to yourself, not to the masses, so to speak. You will be exiled. What's exile? Klipa. You'll be in a place of klipa. Evil elements is klipa, sitra acher, negativity. And then what's going to happen? That's where you're going to be. But then what's going to be as a result? Your disciples will also drink from these evil waters. Why is it evil? Because if you just preach something and you don't live it, right? Oh, especially if you're doing the opposite, then that's evil, period. And then people will be destroyed by this. And then even God, you're going to bring him into exile, the Shekhinah, because the name of heaven is going to be desecrated. That's a very powerful idea. And of course, hence something that we need to really be, to take into consideration. And along that lines, the Midrash says, sages, be careful with your words. In other words, your words as sages that you make in enactments, right, and teach and things that are things for the masses to follow, well, you need to follow it too. Here, the first is about walking the walk, but then there is, often, and it ties in with the same idea that, we make rules and regulations for the kids, but for us, we're above that. No. The rules and regulations, if it applies for the kids, it applies to you too. I mean, if it's a rule, if the rule is you got to go to sleep at 8 o'clock, that doesn't have to apply to the parents, obviously, right? But whatever it might be, the enactments that the sages in every generation. So you might think because it's something for the masses, to help them, that they should not, you're making a fence around the Torah. So for them, it's necessary. But me as a sage, I don't need that fence around the Torah. As a sage, I'm much more aware and therefore not going to fall and fail. But no. So it ties in with this, a similar idea. Any questions on that? Beautiful thought. Right. You could make the claim, and there is, Torah does say this. Actually, it's a thought that just came to me. There's a phrase, and I'm not certain where it comes from. Accept the truth from whoever mouth it came from. If it's the truth, it's the truth. In other words, if someone who is like, not exactly the sage, not exactly a great person, a good person, and they told you something, right? And like, who are you to say that when you are, da 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 da? Well, as a recipient of those words, right, hearing those words, if it's the truth, it doesn't matter if that person's not a good person or not. They said the truth, accept it, right? So you might say over here, oh, well, what's the difference if the sage is teaching the truth, right? So, okay, so not exactly living up to it, So, no, it can't be that way as a sage. It could be that way as just a person, but as a sage, it means whenever you're preaching, you need to live by. That's what a true sage is, in the true sense, right? Is living by it, not like a chassid who's speaking and wants to live by it, but may not live by it in the moment, right? But a true sage is someone who's living with it.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I think someone has their hand up. Davida.
Thank you. I didn't notice that. Davida, please.
Thank you, Vilma. Rabbi Fine, I was just thinking about the story that I heard with the Baal Shem Tov and with the Torah student that said to the other Torah student, I'll gut you like a fish. Are you familiar with that story?
Yeah.
And
Yes, sure.
Is that relating to this, where our words have to be careful, even if we as just not, mainly using training to be careful to say to others?
Yes. I mean, it ties in, that words matter, absolutely. And into the first explanation is that, be careful because your words do have an effect. In that respect, it ties in. The differences in the first one, we're speaking about how you are teaching something and how it could become distorted. So you need to be careful. What you're saying is, for those who are not familiar with the story, in the synagogue of the Baal Shem Tov, two simple people were arguing, and one says to the other, "I'm going to tear you apart like a fish." So Baal Shem Tov took his students and he had them, this often would happen, make a circle, and then he would close with arm in arm, and then he would close the circle. And when he did that, at that occasion, the students started to scream because they saw how the guy, his words of tearing apart this other Jew as a fish took place in spiritual terms, not physically, but spiritually. And therefore, as Davida brings out, and very, very clearly the story, elucidates on that, how careful we need to be with our words, because words matter. They make an impact. They have most definitely an effect. And we need to be careful of that. So that ties in with this, absolutely, in maybe more of a deeper personal way, and how if we say something negative, we are actually creating that negativity. And we know that today, like, that's all modern psychology, which we don't need because we have the Torah to teach us the ultimate true psychology, as in this story, Davida, which is, thank you for sharing because it's beautiful, on how our words have an effect, right? They literally have an effect. So if you're saying something negative, you create a negative vibe, you create that energy, and that energy, for those who are privy to it, like the Baal Shem Tov, and he made that privy to his students by, closing arm in arm, he made that privy to them, that they saw the effect in spiritual terms of those words. So yeah, absolutely. That ties into this on a different angle of things, but yeah, very important. All right, my time is allotted. Tonight, we're going to learn about Mashiach. Many of you are part of the course, and look forward very much. Everybody has. Okay, you have the link and everything. Okay, wonderful. All right, folks, wonderful to see you all. Thank you. Tomorrow we continue with Hillel. A good Chodesh, everybody. A wonderful Chodesh. See you later and tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Good day.